Hello and welcome to Prime Code Media. This is the sixth episode of our CSS for Beginners series. My name is Sana Mapena. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use a CSS ID selectors to style HTML elements, and to do that I'm going to use an HTML only web page which I have created specifically for this episode. This web page has a heading that reads a CSS ID selector. This is our H1. It also has 6 paragraphs with the same sentence that reads the ID selector is used to style the element with a specified ID, which is what CSS ID selectors are all about. This web page already has a style sheet. This is the styles.css file. This is where we are going to write our CSS code, and I have linked this styles.css file with our index.html file via this link here, which has a relationship of a style sheet. And I've already also opened this web page inside my browser. Let's go check it out. Inside my browser, here it is. This is the home page or our index.html page, and let's just test to check if it's not breaking. Refresh once, refresh twice. It's not breaking, it's working fine, which means we can continue and use this web page as part of our discussion of the CSS ID selectors. The ID attribute is used to target a specific HTML element on a web page. Now, the aim will obviously, for example, be to style that particular element or make it perform a particular function. Whatever it is going to be unique for that element. Before we go any further, here's how the syntax looks like. Inside your element, the first thing that you will do is to specify the ID. So the ID will be specified inside the ID attribute. So this is where the ID will be named, and then in the style sheet, the ID attribute will be written using the pound sign or the hashtag symbol followed by the ID name. You will remember that with the classes, a period character or a dot precedes the class name, so the dot comes before the name of the class. But in this case, with ID selectors, the hashtag symbol or the pound sign comes before the ID name. The best way to explain IDs, in my view, is by comparing them to classes. Now, in our previous episode, we saw how specific class selectors are compared to tag selectors. Let's remind ourselves. The first thing that I am going to do, I'm going to change this heading here from its default color, which is black, to red. And to do that, I'm going to go into my style.css file. This is where we are going to write our CSS code. I'm going to target our heading and style it. I'm going to use the tag name H1, follow this up with a set of curly braces, and then inside this set of curly braces, this is where we are going to write our CSS declaration. So what do we want to change? We want to change the color. Okay, this is the CSS property color, and the value that will be how do we want to change the color. We want to change the color to red. This is the value of our CSS property, and then we close this off with a semicolon, which is an equivalent of a full stop. Now let's save our work and then go back to our browser to see if the changes that we've made are rendered accordingly. Now let's refresh. Now there we go. We have successfully managed to change the color of our heading from its default color, which was black, to this new color, which is red. And to do this, we used a tag selector, meaning that we used the tag name and we followed this up with a set of curly braces. Inside the set of curly braces, then we specified the styling that we wanted to apply to our heading, and we managed to change the color of our heading. Now let's take things further. We are still going to target the same element, which is our heading right here. But this time around, we are going to use a class. Okay, now back into our index.html file. Inside here, we are going to specify or give this heading a class. Let's give it a class. Okay, say class, and then we'll put in equal sign and then a set of quotation marks. Inside here, we are going to give it a name, the class name. Let's just call it I'll call this one new color. You can name anything that you think you are fine with. Maybe you might even have better names for these classes than I do. So feel free to be creative as long as you'll be able to understand what's happening right here. The most important thing that I think I should note before we go ahead is that when you come across class names that have more than one word, they are commonly joined with a dash, as I have done here, and this is called the kebab case. Okay, this is called the kebab case. Now let's go ahead. I'm going to save my work and then go into our styles.css. This is our style sheet. I'm going to target the element. Now let me first just copy the codes here. Okay, so that we'll be able to see which ones are classes and which ones are text selectors. Let's just paste this and then this is a class. Okay, from underneath here we are going to write our code. Now fine, we are targeting, remember, our heading, and this time around first here we use the text selector, and right now we are still going to target the same element but now using a class. Now the syntax goes like we first use the period character or the dot, and this will be followed by the class name. Remember, we named our class new color. Okay, small letter new color. This is our class name, a set of curly braces. Inside here we specify the styling that we want to apply to our heading this time around. So it's still the color. This is the CSS property. This is what we want to change this time around. The value will be, let's change this color to blue. This is the value of our CSS property, and then let's save our work and then go back to our browser. And then you see it's still red. Now let's refresh. Now we have managed to change this color now using a class selector. I want to show you something. Let's just inspect this heading. I'm right clicking and then let's inspect. I want to show you something. This is with regards to levels of specificity. As you can see, we managed to use the text selector to change earlier our color, the color of the heading, from black to red. Now what we have done, we have used a CSS class selector to change the heading to blue. The blue color has overwritten the red color. As you can see, here is the red color, but it's cancelled out. Now the color that is rendered is the blue, as you can see, and this is because the class selector is more specific than the tag selector. Okay, let's take things one step further. Again, this time around we are still going to target the same element, but this time around we are going to use an ID. Okay, let's do that. Let's go into our index.html file. Inside here we are not even going to delete the class selector. Inside here we are going to give this heading an ID, and then we will just call this, let's call this change color. I'll just call this change color. All right, save our work and then go into a style sheet. Once again, let me just copy this. Okay, we'll have another section here. This will be a section for ID selector. So I'll just delete class and replace this with ID. And that's it. Underneath here, we are going to write our code. Now we are again targeting the same element, but this time around we are using an ID selector. So the first thing that we do, we put down the pound sign or the hashtag, and this will be followed by the name of the ID. The name of the ID is change color, then set of curly braces. This is where we are going to specify the styling that we want to apply now to the element, and the CSS property is still color colon here, and then the value we want to change this time around. Let's put green here, close this off with a semicolon, and then let's save our work, and then go back to our browser. Inside here, we are now going to refresh. As you can see, now the color has changed to green, and when we refreshed, you know, the blue color was cancelled out. The blue color was cancelled out because here we applied this blue color using a class selector. It is cancelled out because this time around we used an ID selector to change the color of this heading to green. So the ID selector is more specific than the class selector, which if we can just come check them out here. First, we used the tag selector to change the color of our heading from its default color, which was black. And then after using the class selector, the styling that we applied using the class selector overrode or cancelled out the style that we applied using the tag selector. We took things a step further and used the ID selector to apply styling to the same element, and this time around the style that we applied using the ID selector cancelled out the style that we applied using the class selector. Now this was because the ID selector is more specific than the class selector. For more reading on this concept of specificity, I would recommend that you check the MDN web docs. Their article, I think, explains this concept quite well. For example, one of the lines that I would like to draw your attention on is this one here. For example, it says specificity only applies when the same element is targeted by multiple declarations, which is what we were doing right here. We used multiple declarations to target a single element, which in this case was the H1. This is the heading that we have just been targeting. And then it further says here, as per CSS rules, directly targeted elements will always take precedence over rules which an element inherits from its ancestor. So please check this article out. It has a lot of information, and I think you will be able to have a better understanding of specificity. And down here you will see that it also has examples of the different types of selectors which we have just been discussing. There's the type selector, class selector, and the ID selectors. What we are also able to do using CSS is that we can use class selectors to group related elements, meaning that we can use a single class selector to target multiple HTML elements. Now, what does that mean? Let's put this into practice. I am going to use a single class selector to target these two paragraphs, the first two paragraphs. I'm going to use a class selector to do that. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to give these paragraphs a class. Let me give them class, starting with this one. Okay, I'm just going to give this one a class of a, let me call this a class border. I'm just going to create borders around these two paragraphs. Okay, let me call this class border. All right, I'm going to create borders around these two paragraphs. This is the name of the class border. I'm just going to copy this, because remember, I'm using a single class to target two paragraphs. The aim is that I want to show you that I can use a single class selector to target multiple HTML elements. Let me save here, go into my style sheet, and then here under class selectors, I'm going to now target those two paragraphs. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put the name of the class selector is this preceded obviously by a period character, and then followed by the class name, and then the class name this time around is class border. Class border, then set of curly braces, and then here we put the declaration, which is the we are going to specify the styling that we want to apply to those two paragraphs. Okay, let's put the border. Okay, let's give this border a size, let's just say 2 pixel solid. Close this off with a semicolon. Let's save our work, and then go to our browser, and then let's close this for now, and then refresh. There we go. Now, as I said earlier, we have now managed to use this class selector, a single class selector, to target multiple HTML elements. In this case, we managed to style two paragraphs using one class selector. So you'll see what happens when we do the same using an ID selector. Okay, so I'm going to change the background of these two paragraphs, the fifth and the sixth a paragraph, using a single ID. Okay, let's do that. I'm going to come here inside here and give this paragraph an ID. Okay, I'll say let me give this an ID, and then the ID, let's just call this new. I'll call this new border. Once again, you can just call it anything. I'm going to copy this here and then paste it inside the sixth paragraph, and then let's save, go into our style sheet. Inside my style sheet here, I'm going to target those two paragraphs using a an ID, and then the first thing I'm going to put down is the hashtag symbol, and then followed by the ID name, which is new border. That is the ID name, and then a set of curly braces, and then inside here I'm going to specify the styling that I want to apply to those two paragraphs. Again, let's just change the border. Again, let's just give it a 2 pixel size solid. All right, save, go back to our browser, and then refresh. You'll see that the CSS engine is not screaming at us or saying that okay, or breaking or anything. It has allowed us to use an ID to target the multiple elements, but I would advise against doing this. Although you will still be able to apply styling. As you can see that we have managed to apply the same styling that we applied using the class selectors, but this time around using the ID selectors. The fact that we will be able to apply this type of styling using the ID, and the CSS engine is not breaking or giving us errors, does not necessarily mean that you can just use them. But so I would advise against doing this, because for these purpose there are class selectors, and ID selectors are not for this. You should make sure that there's a single instance of an ID in a web page. So for example, you cannot have different people having the same passport number, for example. It just can't be. There should be something wrong if something like that should happen. So please make sure that you don't do this. So I'm going to go back into my code and delete this. Once again, if you are using Atom, for example, Atom is already like telling us that don't use ID selectors. Actually, Atom discourages the against the use of ID selectors at all. So I'm going to delete this, because this is inconsistent with CSS good practice. And then I'm going to come in here and then also delete here this code here. So if we wanted to style these two paragraphs using a single selector, we would use class selectors for that and not an ID selector, because ID selectors are not for that. Also important is that an HTML element can have more than one class selector, but an HTML element can only have one ID selector. Let's put this into practice. To do that, I am going to change the color of this paragraph here. That is the fifth paragraph. I'm going to change it to red, and then once I'm done, I'm also going to underline it. Okay, so let's go inside our text editor. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to give this a class. All right, I'm going to give it a class name. The class name here will be let me call it new style. Once again, feel free to name it whatever you think is you are fine with. New style is the name of the class here. Let me save and then go into my style sheet. Here I'm going to target the fifth paragraph. Okay, first thing is the period character followed by the name of the class, which is new style, a set of curly braces, and then the duration inside here. The CSS property is color colon, and then the value will be, let's change the color to red. This is the value of our CSS property, and then we close this off with a semicolon. We save our work, and then we go into our browser and then we refresh. Now the color has changed to red, and we used a class selector. Now let's say apart from changing the color of this paragraph, we also want it to be underlined. Okay, so let's go in here. To do that, we'll just come in here and add another class. And to add another class, the thing that we are going to do is just to put a blank space, create a blank space, and then include another class. Okay, let's put a new class, another class here. I'll just call this one let me call it change style, or let me just call paragraph underline, underline. Okay, I think this is appropriate. Okay, fine. Let's save. All right, paragraph underline. I just did this so that I don't confuse words inside my style sheet. Inside my style sheet here, I'll come again, put a period character and then the name of the class. para underline. This is the name of my class. And then I said I wanted to underline. So to underline, I'm going to use text decoration. All right, text decoration, and then let me select underline. Okay, fine. Let's save our work. Go back into our browser and then refresh. So we have underlined our paragraph. So first we changed the color, and in addition to changing the color, we also underlined our paragraph, and we did this by using two classes inside the same HTML element. What we did, we included this new or other, or the second class selector inside the quotation marks. The only thing that we did, we separated the two classes with a blank space, and that is how we managed to use two class selectors to style a single HTML element. Let's try this out using an ID selector. Okay, we are going to try to do is to change the color. We'll change the color to let's change it to blue using an ID selector. Let's give this paragraph an ID like so, and then we'll call this, let's just call this change style. All right, save our work, go into our style sheet, and in this section that we have created for ID selectors right here, we will first write the hashtag symbol followed by the name of the ID, and then the name of the ID is change style set of curly braces. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake here, not a square bracket. Okay, set of curly braces. Inside here we want to change the color to blue, I think I said. Okay, this is the CSS property, and then the value will be blue, and then we close it off with a semicolon. Let's save our work and then go back into our browser and then refresh. Now the color of this paragraph has changed to blue. Now let's say, in addition to changing or styling this paragraph with this blue color, in addition to this, we also want to underline this paragraph. Let's go back inside this element here, and then again create a blank space. All right, and then put another ID. All right, we'll just call this what can we call this? Let's just call this okay, I'll just call this ID underline. I'm not sure if this ID underline is this great. No, anyway, for the purposes of just showing you how this works, I think it will work fine. I'm running out of names for these IDs and classes. I hope you understand. Okay, let me just save here. All right, I'll go back into my style sheet and then target this element again using a different ID inside my style sheet here. All right, all right. The hashtag symbol followed by the ID name. I said the ID. What did I say here? I said ID underline. Fine. Okay. ID underline. ID underline, and then set of curly braces, and then we said we want to underline this. Okay. All right. Let's try to underline. Okay. Use text decoration, and then let's select underline. Okay, save our work and then go back to our browser and then refresh. You'll see that after refreshing, even the style that we previously applied using an ID that was to change the line or this paragraph to blue has also disappeared, or has changed. This color is back to its default color, which is black. So this is because this line of code is invalid. Okay, this line of code is invalid, and that is why even the style that we applied earlier has been removed, because CSS does not recognize this line of code. So which means you cannot have an element that has two IDs. So I'm going to delete this. The aim here was just to show that you cannot have an element, an HTML element that has more than one ID selector. In closing, there can only be a single instance of an ID on a web page. You can use an ID selector if you want to style an element differently from other elements on the same web page. You can also use it if you want to target that element using JavaScript. For example, maybe you want that element to behave in a particular way, which is something that we will discuss when we get to discussions about the JavaScript later. And with that, we have come to the end of this episode, which was about the CSS ID selectors. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to this channel and click the bell icon to get notifications when new videos come out. Till we code again next time, take care. Bye bye.